Science as an academic subject is often outsourced via online courses, community programs, and co-ops because it can be highly technical. But when it comes to our little ones, how can we moms and dads ignite an interest in science at a level they can understand and enjoy? Today's guest, homeschooling mom Alex Resch, will share some tips for enjoying science with young children. Stay with us.
Welcome to Homeschooling Saints, the podcast that helps you create the homeschool you love for the people you love. Our host is Lisa Mladinich, a Catholic life coach, TV host, best-selling author, and an instructor at Homeschool Connections.
Before we get started, remember to subscribe to this podcast so you never miss an episode. And if you're watching on YouTube, click the bell to join our channel. Hello and welcome. I'm Lisa Mladinich, your host, and it's a joy to welcome Alex Resch back to the program to share tips for enjoying science with young children. And she's here today. I'm so blessed. She's got her littlest one in her arms. So you're going to get to hear the beautiful music of a baby in this interview. I'm so happy about that. Alex Resch grew up in Tampa, Florida. She attended college and grad school in New York and has a PhD in chemistry. She was a middle and high school science teacher and is now a homeschooling mom to her own children. She recently helped to develop an original curriculum for her parish's religious education program, and she now teaches the program as a master catechist at her parish. She is also the managing editor at amazingcatechist.com and co-owns Rest in Thee Publications, just the way it sounds, www.restinthee.com. And if you want to write to Alex, you can write, well, this will be in the show notes, but it's info@restinthee.com. Alex, thank you so much for being with us today in the middle of your busy mothering and schooling day.
Thanks, Lisa. So happy to be here. I always love talking with you and so excited to talk about science.
All right, good. We're going to have so much fun. So just step us into your background. What caused you to really love science?
So my dad is the science guy. So he is an electrical engineer by training, but he loves all kinds of science. And he's going to be 70 next year, and he's still cracking open the textbooks, learning about all kinds of things. So
love it.
When I was a little girl, it was just part of life. He would be taking apart a TV, and he would show us, the inside. Or if we had a science fair project, Dad is going to be involved. He's just always loved it. And actually, one of the most fun, cutest memories, my dad's a professor, so he's also a teacher. And he would actually come to our schools from, on, what is that called? Career Day.
Mm-hmm.
So he would come on Career Day, but the teachers would have Dr. Athan not on Career Day all the time. He would come and talk to my classes from when I was in preschool and my sisters. So he would come and teach us about microchips. And so he did it from like when we were little up till high school. So I guess you could say he kind of passed down the love of science and the love of teaching for sure to all children of all ages.
Oh, that's fabulous. What an amazing example, too. I mean, we talk so much in Catholic circles as wives, those of you wives who are listening, about servant leadership of the Father and that spiritual authority and all of that. But social scientists in the secular world, and I've mentioned this before on the show, have found, to their great surprise, that in families that practice the faith, where the father's the only one practicing the faith versus the mother being the only one, if it's just the mother, about 28% of kids, I'm getting to a point here, will practice their faith in adulthood. But with the father leading, it's like 78%. Yeah. It's a huge jump. And so I say that just because your father's passion for science, his delight in sharing knowledge and discovering and always learning, that has spiritual power too. And I love that he stood for such beautiful things in your growing up experience. So just shout out to all the dads and grandpas out there. You are very important in our lives. So step us into what you've started to do with your own children so far.
Sure. So, ever since they were little, anything, what it is? Kids are easy to teach science, little kids, because they're just curious about everything. And it's all around you, like this light in the room. You could have a lesson about electricity. When you go outside, kids are fascinated by the weather. they love it. They love, why does it rain? Why is the sky blue? What's a tornado doing? Animals, all of that is science. So really, to start, or even cooking in the kitchen is science. Even when I was carrying him in my womb, I would talk with my girls about the development of the baby in the womb. It's so what I was going to say was we are surrounded by it. We are surrounded by God's creation, and it's there. He made all of this for us, and he allows us to learn about it, about his creation through science and the other subjects, because it's beautiful and he loves us and he allows that gift to us. So when they were really small, they loved anything with, like I said, anything to do with nature. A lot of children's programs that you can find or curricula, they're nature based. So, we would go on a lot of nature walks, or we would go to the zoo or the aquarium, or if you have a science center nearby or anything, or even your own backyard, just let them dig around in the backyard. So just really practical, fun, like whatever. And my husband's also really into gardening. So that's a whole science lesson, for the whole spring and summer. Yeah. So I guess we just, whatever we let them kind of lead it, lead the exploration, whatever they were interested in, we would do it with them if we didn't really know much about it. There's picture books galore, just read to them. So just really simple, just whatever they're interested in, you can go down rabbit holes with your children in the early years for sure.
Yeah. So pick one or two little examples of places where you had the delight of going down a rabbit hole with your kids, or something really specific happened that you thought went well. Like, just step us into your experience of it, because you're saying the most beautiful, inviting things. I can't wait to hear the details.
So speaking of rabbit holes, we went down a literal and figurative rabbit hole recently. And it was awesome. We were swimming in the backyard, and my husband saw Bunny by the pool, and she wasn't moving. She wasn't scared of him, which is kind of odd. She was just standing really still. So I'm like, is she okay? So I peeked over the side of the pool, and she was giving birth to a baby bunny. Right there.
Oh my gosh.
Literally in our backyard. And what they do is, I didn't know anything about bunny reproduction or bunny live birth, but they dig a little hole for the bunnies, and then they give birth into the hole to protect them. And then they kind of cover the hole up. So she had dug this hole, and there were three, at least, maybe more, like three tiny little bunnies. And so we all ran out of the pool, and then when she had given birth, she just ran away under the deck. So, but then we had bunny science lesson time for probably a couple weeks. We had a bunny book. It's a nonfiction rabbit book that someone had given us. So the girls were very interested in reading that. After we had come inside, it was we had like bunny week. I think it was like 2 weeks. So this is what I would do practically when this happens. So when some subject comes up, now what do you do? How do you dive into the rabbit hole? So we actually had a book about bunnies that someone had given. It was a nonfiction. It's a common author. She does like these beautiful, like science, maybe they're just animals, but they're nonfiction picture books, like illustrated books. So it was all detailed, like about what bunnies eat, how many bunnies are born, how many, like the gestation period. So this book was a treasure. It had a lot of the information. So, but if I didn't have a book, I would just just Google, bunny picture books or nonfiction bunny books. Or if I'm really last minute, we'll just go straight to the library and I'll just go to the librarian and I'll be like, can you help us find bunny books? That's what they're there for. So yeah, exactly. Librarians, excellent resource. So I would get a couple books, like maybe some on their reading level, maybe some that I could read to them, even maybe like, you could read them Peter Cottontail. You could read you could go nonfiction and fiction. And then if they were still really into it, I'd probably do like some kind of craft, like just Google like bunny, paper craft. Or if you're artsy, you could draw one up on construction paper, or let the kid, once they reach a certain age. So my girls are in 3rd and 4th grade. If I kind of spark it, like, oh, we should make bunny paper bag puppets, and just give them the stuff, they can like take it and run with it. But if they're a little younger, you could just look up, bunny printables, and you could be studying bunnies for like a month.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just keep going until they get tired of it. You could eat carrots. You could just use all the 5 senses and and then, keep observing the bunny. We did go check. But the mom really hides them well. And then I think they do hop away after a few days, but then we see them in our yard. So it was like I couldn't have planned it any better. It was so cool. So so we went down a real rabbit hole and it was awesome.
So it sounds like there's a naturalness to discovery together. And then you start to just pull resources that are age appropriate, that book or that little craft, and you're spending time together. That is just such the huge blessing of homeschooling, isn't it? That they're in that environment of love, discovering together, so that everything is connected.
Exactly.
And I know that there's wonder at God's creation that's underneath all of it.
Yeah, and I heard the most perfect verse yesterday. Actually, it was from letter from Paul to the Corinthians, first letter of Paul to the Corinthians, and it started. It said, "Knowledge puffs up." So, like people who get really smart, they can be prideful. So it said, "Knowledge puffs up, and love builds up."
Ooh.
And I was like, "That is how you teach." That's how you should see your homeschool. Because I fall into it too. We get into these, we want our kids to be well educated, and that is our responsibility. But if they're miserable and we're miserable and we're not loving them, we're not building them up. Yeah. We're not building them up, then it's not good. It's not serving well. So
important. It's like the real fuel, the grace for it to be life-giving knowledge is not there without the love. Somebody was telling me this morning that that at a certain point in her life with her children, she was around some people who had their kids in daycare all day long. And when they were all together with the children, she noticed that they had no idea how to do just the normal everyday parenting things. Like they were surprised at how involved she was with everything the children were doing and things like that.
Yeah.
That they didn't have the same bonds. And so, we don't realize just how precious the simple ordinariness of discovering together can be. So beautiful. So if you had to just say 1 or 2 things that would help others to take whatever's there in front of them, or maybe the things that, like your father shared his love of science. He took his own treasure and the joy of that and shared it. So I hear that you have that too. Obviously, you immediately gravitated to the bunnies and what we could learn and all of that. So in this area of just scientific discovery and doing things with our kids, say a little bit more about what are 1 or 2 kind of points of guidance, maybe some tips for each mom to find her way with this.
Okay, sure. So everyone is a scientist. And I think what happened to a lot of adults that don't enjoy teaching science, or say, "Oh, I can't, you teach it, you're a science teacher." Okay, maybe it is a little easier for me, but you can do it. You can really do it. I think at some point along the way, it's very common, and kids would tell me this when I would teach. They would say like, "Oh, I'm horrible at science. I hate science." And they probably had a really bad experience with science. And then they internalize it as like, "Oh, I'm bad at biology. So I'm just," they had a bad experience in a class, basically, I think is what happened. And especially when I say that I taught chemistry, and chemistry is my absolute favorite science, people are like, "Oh, chemistry is horrible." So that is unfortunate. And I ran across, my own share of bad science teachers. So I think, when you reach adulthood, you've had that experience, it is damaging, right? And then you just think, "Oh, I can't, it's just beyond." But all right. So common things that people do that are science are, so such as cooking, So cooking, you can do so, and you might, you're going to have to do a little research. And even I'm not a food scientist. So, and I'll tell you a couple of resources that would also be helpful too, like specific books. But just to start out, if you cook or if you have a dog, if you have any animals, that is science. If you gardening is amazing. There's the classic like seed in a bag. Kids love that. Or you remember science experiments too, like when you were in school. Like right now, my kids they trace their body, to learn about the human body. That's like a classic, thing I showed to my sister. She's like, oh, I loved doing that. So, if you have any good science memories, you could start with that. So, but there's cooking, there's gardening, for the dads. If you like to work on your car, you can teach them that's science. And again, just if you like to wherever you like to visit. So if you like, definitely take advantage of like farms and nature centers. I'm trying to think, if you're an artist, okay, if you're totally like far from science, if you're an artist, you could learn about how different paint, like the properties of different paint, or color theory. That's like a math science. And that's the thing too. Science isn't isolated in its own bubble. Like it crosses over to the other subjects. Even if you're studying history, maybe you're going to come across, the famous astronomers or famous scientists. There's actually a really cool book. It's called Amazing, like 25 Catholic scientists or 21 Catholic scientists, and they're all Catholic. And some of them are quite famous, like Louis Mendel. He was Catholic. He was a monk. He's the father of genetics. And yeah, you're very excited about that. So, just looking within our Catholic faith, just looking at the history of certain saints, you can find so much science.
Yeah. I remember, this is for a little bit older kids, but I remember reading things with my daughter in her early teen years about St. Nicholas Steno, the father of geology.
Oh,
And I've also shared things with kids at the middle school level when I've done some presentations on science that Father Lagrange, I forget his first name, the Big Bang Theory, right? That's what other people call it. But the origins of the universe, so much science came out of the monastery systems. And so the church has been wrongly called anti-science because of, the glitches with Galileo and things like that. But it's nonsense. We've had actually the Vatican astronomer, the head of the Vatican astronomer, at Castel Gandolfo. Is that how you say it? I can't remember. But like on this show, the church has always loved and supported science.
And you reminded me, Saint Hildegard, she is a favorite saint that I just found. She's a doctor of the church, first of all. And she was not just a scientist. She did everything. She wrote beautiful music. She actually, one of my friends brought her violin to our house one day and talked about and she's like an amazing musician. She would not call herself a scientist, but she taught them about how the sound, goes to the eardrum, and I can't even explain it. And it was awesome. It was like a science music lesson combination. So, so there you go. There's your music science. But Saint Hildegard, you could do a whole thing about her. She was very into like natural, herbs and healing. Yes. That's another thing. If you're into, natural remedies, that's science. You could go, it's botany, it's medicine, it's biology. But yeah, if you really need inspiration, pick up a book about Saint Hildegard. She's phenomenal. Like it's actually, and people still use her recipes and her remedies. Wow. And this was like, when was she? In like the early 1500s, I want to say. Yeah. So it has stood the test of time for sure.
Yeah, amazing. So many of the pioneers in science have been Catholics. Jerome Lejeune, whose cause for sainthood, I believe, has been open. The cures were devout Catholics, and I believe Louis Pasteur as well. But anyway, we could probably go on and on about that. But yes, so there's much to be discovered in science, everywhere we look.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we are going to just take a short sponsor break to hear from our friends at Homeschool Connections. And we are here with Alex Resch today, talking about enjoying science with young children. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Walter Crawford.
And I'm Maureen Whitman.
We are the co-founders of homeschoolconnections.com and proud sponsors of the Homeschooling Saints podcast,
which is here to help you homeschool more joyfully, more easily, and more effectively.
We want to thank you for listening.
And we invite you to check out our courses at homeschoolconnections.com.
And now, back to our program.
All right, we're back with Alex Resch talking about enjoying science with young children. So, Alex, what are you planning next for your kids?
So I feel like I really loved those early years of just exploring. And also, a lot of people, and maybe your viewers are waiting for this, a lot of my friends are like, what science curriculum do you use? What are you using? And usually I say, I'm using none, and they get so angry. Just like I said, just all those experiences, all those things. But now that they are, their interests are getting more specific. So we can't really, or I feel that we shouldn't really continue the general, exploration at this time. I feel like they would get a lot out of, an actual curriculum. So, so right now we're kind of finishing up. We did actually use a curriculum, a specific curriculum, and it's actually a Charlotte Mason science curriculum. It's from the company Simply Charlotte Mason, and she is Christian. And this curriculum had nothing, it had nothing contradictory, because what it was she used the 7 days of creation, and every day of creation there were science lessons associated.
Love it.
And it was so well done. It was a PDF. It was very affordable. And all the supplies for the activities were very easy to get. There is a very long list of picture books, which mostly I got from the library. So it was just easy for me to set up. And it went through the 7 days of creation. So we were reading scripture. So you can choose your own Bible. And she gives you the scripture to read. So you read the scripture. So day 1, God created everything. God created the world, the light and the darkness. And so we did, I think that first activity was like a shadows and light activity. So super basic, but it was a good overview. So it went through, there were physics topics, there were plants. We learned about all kinds of animals, insects, the crawling creatures, the swimming creatures, the flying creatures. And then it ended with the humans. So that's why we're doing the human body. So they were all year, they were like, what are we going to get to day 6? So not only were they learning all these science topics, they know the days of creation now because they made a notebook. And so they were really into the human body. So the next thing we are going to learn, I've been eyeing the TAN publishers just came out a few years ago with a whole science series, and it looked beautiful, and it is beautiful. So I got it's called Cells and Systems. So we're going to be doing an actual curriculum. And actually, I have hesitated to buy a science curriculum because, especially biology, my husband and I feel that it needs to be learned through a Catholic lens, especially biology. All science should, and there weren't a lot of resources around when they were little either. That's kind of why I didn't, buy anything, and I just sort of just went with whatever they were interested in. But TAN does have this series. I think they recommend it for maybe like 2nd grade and up. So we had to wait, till they were a little older, but it's family style. So from about 2nd grade and up. And it has resources for all the family members. And they have these awesome videos. I'm so excited. I watched almost all of them by myself when it came. I was like, this is so amazing. So they have the science curriculum. And then they have these videos where they connect it to the faith and to theology.
Love it.
It is so good. And it's TAN. So it's like all so beautiful and well done. The book is amazing. I'm so excited. So that is what we're doing next. So we'll explore those. I like those too, because I guess up to this point, we've been doing sort of like a unit study. You could call it like unit studies. Like we would do the bunnies and then, gardening. And then, so now our unit study, I think these are meant to be for like half of your school year. So I like to do science in these littler chunks, because as the interest kind of fades, then we can move on to whatever else. So basically, I'll just keep letting them, lead me. And I let them pick, I'm like, there's astronomy or there's the human body. So they were like, okay, we want to do the human body. So that's what we got. So I did finally.
Systems. Amazing.
Yeah. It looks really good. The first video, he explains how what a cell is, and then how the church and how we are all like, I hope I might say it wrong, but I think he explained how we're all like cells in the body of Christ in the church. It's amazing. It's amazing. I can't wait to watch it again.
Shivers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, how beautiful. No, that's exciting. I love that you move from, because little kids, right, they have super short attention spans, but they can be so in the moment. They can see brand new bunnies and then look at the pictures and start to connect those things. And only God knows how he's forming their souls in those places of wonder and connection, from the factual to the actual, and just the pure wonder of it all. Love what you're doing. And it's just so full of also honoring where they are in their own development. Like when a child is in a school, right, they have to be in developmental lockstep. As much as there's much good going on in some of those classrooms, we know that there's schools that have gone a little crazy these days. But we know that those things can be good. But when our children can do some of the leading, that's just so exciting. It helps them to be lifelong learners. When you think about off into the future too, things you might like to try with Joseph when he's a little bit older, or things that your older children might be able to do at a more sophisticated level. What are the kinds of things that you daydream about doing with your kids?
Oh yeah, the girls kind of already do it. They love to help their little brothers, and there is a series. I think it's just 2 books, but it is. If this series doesn't inspire you and your kids, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. No, but it's called the series is called Mudpies and Magnets, and they are specific science activity. I felt like I struck gold when I found these books. So if you are still looking at me like I need direction, these books, you can literally, they give you guidance in the book how to teach science, how to set up a science center in your home. And they have everything organized by subject and age. So you could just open the physics chapter or the botany chapter and just start at the beginning and do the experiments. And they have really nice explanations that anyone can understand. And they have little extensions. They're these really awesome little books. I never heard of them until recently. And I think you can start doing things like age 2.
Wow.
They're good. They're like for age 2 to 6. And if your children are older than that, you can still use these books and just give them the book and say, go have fun, because again, a lot of the materials of those books too are very common things. And I've pretty much always found activities in those books that they would be interested in. So if they are interested in the weather, you could go to Mudpies. There's 2. There's I think it's called Mudpies and Magnets, and then more Mudpies and Magnets. So it's 2 books. I got them very cheaply used. And those are awesome. And I rarely buy books. I like to use the library a lot, but those books are completely worth it. You will use them. I mean, I feel like we'll still use them. So I think in the future, if I say, hey, go pull, the Mudpie book off and find something for your brother, they would love to do it. And I also like them because the explanations aren't watering down. They're explained at a simple level, but also accurately. That's important to us too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And it occurs to me, like when you just said, pull something down for your little brother, if it's that well explained and the child is a little older and maybe past that, maybe they can even lead, I've seen
definitely.
homeschools where somewhat older children are actually teaching and guiding younger children, and they're learning so much by doing that.
Yeah.
And making amazing memories.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Alex.
Yeah. When you teach, you learn it even better. And also, don't be afraid to revisit. That's what's also cool. Well, we have it in the liturgical year, right? It's a cycle. So if you miss learning about a saint this year, you're going to catch them. You can catch them next year. And that's how we're growing and learning. It's a cycle, just like how the seasons, the physical, natural seasons are a cycle: spring, summer, fall, winter. They go in a cycle. So if you observe a tree for a whole year, the tree is going to change through the seasons, and then you can do it again. And as they're older, they're going to gain more from that experience. So I've totally repeated things, and they've asked. It's like celebrating the liturgical year. They look forward to certain feast days and certain traditions. And then with science, it can be the same thing. Like around the time of year, like, oh man, actually, I'm so happy. This just popped into my head. But on Long Island, there are I knew nothing about butterflies, and we had a parsley plant in our backyard, and it attracts swallowtail butterflies. So probably for the past, they're those really pretty ones. They're mostly black, and they have like blue and white markings. But I was going to smash them because I had no idea what they were. There's these huge caterpillars on the parsley, and I looked close, and I actually whipped my phone out, and you can use Google Lens and figure out what this creature, any creature is. There's all these kind of apps. Yeah.
Yeah. So Google Lens will identify it for you.
Right.
Nice.
Yes. And there's even more specific like nature ones, but that one definitely works. And it was like, it was like, this is a swallowtail caterpillar. They're one of the easiest caterpillars to raise in your home. So I was like, and I literally chopped a bunch of parsley off the plant. And so this year we didn't get any butterflies, sadly, but or any caterpillars, but we did that for years.
Wow.
Like they always would ask to go out and find the butterflies. And when they're little, and that's the thing too. And it's the same as our faith. You're not going to learn everything about the faith in one day or in 1 year. We take a lifetime and we're still not going to know everything. And that's how science is. And you can keep exposing them to the same things, the same topics, and the repetition will teach them. They will learn, and their understanding will deepen for science and the faith. So, people are like, oh, you have to separate those. No, they go together. God made science. You can't separate it. You can't. You're missing out. You're missing the complete picture if you separate science and faith.
Yeah. I talked to a scientist once, another chemist, another PhD in chemistry, another one of these interviews, Dr. Stacy Trasankos. And she was saying, when people ask me to prove the faith through science, I say, no, you have it backwards. It is through the lens of my faith that science makes sense.
That's it.
I was like, whoa, thank you. Thank you for that. It's just beautiful. I love what you're doing. Sure. May I ask, and I know this is not something that we prepared to discuss, but if you would, just what are some little things that you notice benefit your children from this connecting of faith and science? What are you seeing in their development? I don't know if you can pull that out because it's your family life, right? It's just the way things are. But you had to address that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think so. Before you learn, I should have said this at the beginning, but I'm saying it now. Before you have to teach them any science, you have to teach them the faith. You have to, because you are going to come across secular science resources, secular books. Most of the nonfiction books, there's nothing bad in them, but they don't mention anything about God or, so you have to start really teaching them the faith, teaching them the catechism and the Bible. And honestly, besides the fact that it teaches them to respect God's creation and know him more and love him more through the science, it actually is easier to teach some things about science. So for example, we had a small meetup a couple years ago with a few families, and I was teaching the kids chemistry, and I did we did purchase like it was a chemistry little unit, and it was completely secular. So it was neutral religious wise. Like it wasn't, it was a secular company. So we're learning about the periodic table. And so we were talking about oxygen and hydrogen and the water molecule. And this is a really abstract thing to think about, atoms that you cannot see and molecules that you can't see taking on these shapes. But the water molecule, so the oxygen's at the top and then the hydrogen's poked down here. So it's actually in the shape of a triangle, the water molecule.
Uh-huh.
And as soon as I said it, one of the boys was like the Trinity, like the Holy Trinity. And I was like,
water
this is
and the Trinity.
really,
Wow.
like the water molecule, like we would die without water. We would die without the Holy Trinity. So it so now like they'll always remember that water is a triangle, but even deeper now they've just gotten this deeper, connection to the Trinity. So, and knowing your faith, and you can, so making those connections, it just God is infused everywhere. And that is the sad thing about scientists who, they can really make a God of it, or, of medicine, of medicine and doctors. And as long as I take all these medicines and, I'll be fine. But, it's like God is infused in all of it. So knowing your faith and learning your faith, as you study the other subjects, it's all going to go deeper. So it's all very well ordered, that the fact that we have to pass on the faith, that is our duty, and we love to do it. And it's going to serve all the other subjects, including science. So I think, in short, it makes it easier to teach them, especially biology. You have to connect the faith, because people are trying to change biology and change facts, scientific facts about babies in the womb and things like that. So it will only help you to think about, okay, how could I connect this to God? And you can do the flip too. Like, our faith is such a gift in so many ways. Like, St. Lucy's feast day is associated with candles, right? With flames. So you could just learn about candles when you learn about St. Lucy. Like, I do that all the time. If there's a feast day, or during Easter, the lily is associated with St. Joseph, and it's an Easter flower. So I just looked it up online. We dissected a lily. So you can flip it the other way too. If you have a favorite saint or a favorite feast day and you're a homeschooler, I think sometimes homeschoolers feel maybe guilty, like, oh, I shouldn't take a day off, even though every day is a day for learning, but for a feast day. But if it was for the Assumption, I was actually looking online, so I'm gonna have to make one myself, but to do like a lesson about clouds for the Feast of the Assumption,
Nice.
So you can take off the day and celebrate your feast day, and you can throw in a little science, a little art, you can still, that's the best thing about homeschooling, right? You can just go, which you can guide it, you can lead it. And it's hard sometimes, and it does require effort, but the internet is very helpful. And if you have, kind of a few books to pull or a good library resource, then we can make it work.
Yeah. And I love the inventiveness and the specificity of each little thing that you're describing, even apart from these beautiful resources that will take you through a whole semester of study, because I'm not wired for consistency. That's just not the way I'm made. Some people are really good at doing progressions, and say they had their kids doing nature study from season to season and keeping up with something like that. I'm terrible at that. I would start something and not finish it, right? Or collecting butterflies or whatever it might be. I would not be the person that would help sustain that. I would be happy to get it started, but I wouldn't sustain it. So for the spontaneous mom, the one who's not so disciplined by nature, to be able to discover day by day what is beautiful and connect it where it belongs into the discovery of God himself, of the Creator, that just really appeals to me. It allows for every different mom style and every different child style to thrive and to keep discovering and having a great time.
Yep. Yep. You don't need a set thing for science. I promise. It's better. And even I think I shied away from a lot of curriculums early on because they're very dense because they want to present, a thorough, good picture. But then I'm the type that if we don't do every page in the book, and if my kids don't know every vocabulary word, I feel like I didn't do a good job, So that also freed me of that. We can make our own vocabulary words like that they're going to naturally be interested in. And it is very off the cuff. Most of my science is very off the cuff, unless I get an idea a little in advance, or we might be doing some curriculum or some lesson, and then I'm like, oh, we should do this as well, and then we just put it aside and just go down that rabbit hole. Just go find the rabbits.
I love it. I love it. So, just as we're wrapping up, Alex, is there anything? Just a final thing that you'd like to say to moms, dads, grandparents, who's ever out there scratching their heads going, gee, I think I might be able to have more fun with science with my kids. What would you like to leave them with?
Just have fun with it. I read this, I can't remember where I read it, but it was talking about how, when your kids leave, they're going to remember how they felt in homeschool, like when they were homeschooled, And that made me really think, because even like science is one of the subjects, and math is a tough subject sometimes too, to teach, to be the teacher and to be the student and to be the parent teaching the subject. So, you don't have to finish the curriculum. You don't have to finish the book. If it's not serving your family, you don't serve the curriculum. The curriculum should serve you. So, and for science, at least New York is a pretty strict homeschooling state, wouldn't you say? They keep on us.
On the school district. Some of them are really chill in New York, and some of them are very maniacally on, monitoring everything and demanding reports.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. But I guess I've never heard anyone tell me that their district was like, oh, I didn't cover enough science. Science, you can take a breather with, I feel like reading, writing, math, that's very measurable, I guess. Mm-hmm. But science, you can measure science knowledge, but maybe, if my kids aren't interested in simple machines, I'm not going to force it. They're not going to learn anything. Mm-hmm. Anyways, just to check a box. So don't feel like, for science especially, you don't have to check a box. Everyone should be a well-rounded citizen who knows, basic scientific knowledge. I think that's important. So, maybe if your kids are really into butterflies for a long time, maybe you could steer them into, chemistry, or steer them into human anatomy at some point, right? Because I think just as consumers of the news and current events, we should all have a base knowledge of science so that we aren't fear-mongered easily and led astray. So, as long as you're just sharing that basic kind of knowledge, there's no boxes and none of it matters to get to heaven, which is the ultimate goal. None of this knowing, what Einstein's theory of relativity was means nothing to get to heaven. Mm-hmm. So have truly just sit back, have fun with science. If you think it looks fun, try it and do it. And if you want to, if you need to feel like you need to outsource it, just go to a farm class, go to a nature center, go to a science center, every month. And that's your science for the month, honestly,
Wonderful. Alex Resch is here with us today. Thank you so much, Alex. Find her at restinthee.com, and you can email her at info@restinthee.com. And we're going to throw a few extra resources in the show notes. Thanks for being with us, everybody. We're praying for you. Please pray for us too. And Alex, can't wait to have you on again.
Thanks, Lisa.
All right. Bye, everybody. Thanks. And that's our show for today. Our program is sponsored by homeschoolconnections.com. Be sure to subscribe to Homeschooling Saints and leave us an honest review. God bless you, and thank you for joining us.